I think I heard action. That's right, folks. It is action. We're taking action. We're controlling or we're taking charge of our lives because we're really being governed by government and media and censorship and all that's going on. They create this paradigm that we're following. We are not about that. We're called Enlightened Up. It's Craig Shoemaker here with Enlightened Up, offering you an opportunity to approach your life in a different way. We have comedians and actors and writers and spiritual leaders on our show. We now have one who has like 9,000 hyphens with his job title, a comic, but he's a number of things. John Henson is our guest. John, glad you made this big trek here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't realize when you invited me to do this that I could stretch out my arm and hit your studio with a rock from my front door.
He just moved to the neighborhood. I've had so many people on here that complain. I'm in Westlake Village, California. It's our studio here. And I've been telling John, come on, come over to the studio. So I finally got him here because you're my neighbor now for like a month.
And a portion of that time we've been out of town, and then we're renovating this house. We've had our hands full. But it's funny that you talk about the way people respond to Westlake. I knew nothing about Westlake before we moved out here.
Same here.
I'm amazed by the amount of people I know that have lived in L.A. for decades that act like I've moved to Utah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always say we're in Wyoming.
They're like, where?
They'll never come to see you.
Where is Westlake Wooded? And I'm like, it's just past.
But you were that way.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm like, it's not. It's like 20 minutes past Malibu. And people are like, there's shit past Malibu? Is it? I thought it all ended there. Are you sure? Are you in Arizona? Like, as my wife said, anybody that comes to see us is bringing an overnight bag because they just don't know. They don't know.
The other thing about it is it's so beautiful. I yelled at my friend who had been out here for 20 years. I yelled at him for not telling me how wonderful it is. Like he kept it a secret.
It doesn't feel like L.A. It really,
Yet we're close enough.
Yeah, you're within striking distance. Mm-hmm. You can get to anywhere.
You don't have to have that home in Montana.
Right. I mean, it feels, and when I say not in L.A., I mean in a good way. Like it feels like you are free from, my wife and I drove back to Hollywood to go to the interactive Van Gogh exhibit, which is phenomenal if you haven't seen it. It's like a multimedia.
For kids too?
Yeah, we brought our children. Right. It's 360-degree video presentation of his work and music, and it's animated, and it's I won't even try to describe it because I won't do it justice. But it's
anything about it lopping off his ear? Is that part of the?
It's not. It is addressed in some of the writing, but not visually.
Okay.
But it's an extraordinary thing. But driving back into, I used to live right near the Tower Records building. When I met my wife, I had a house in the hills right above that. And we were driving back through there, and I was like, how did I do this? Like,
how did I love this?
I was like, are we on Mad Max Fury Road right now? Like, why?
Well, it's real bad now.
I could not get over how different it is.
How about the homeless situation?
I was like, I could not get out of there fast enough.
There's so many tents. I thought it was an REI exhibit.
It's
under the bridge in Hollywood. It's unbelievable how many homeless are there.
Yeah,
and they really are building structures.
I was about to say, like, with really nice tents. Really, like, I'm like, are you guys sponsored by Patagonia? Like, how?
They have wings.
Yeah. They've got, washing stations.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah. It's amazing to me. Does anything in you, I'm just getting to know you basically. I don't know you that well. I mean, do you have like a rescue gene in you? That's what happens to me. I really want to come up with the solution for them. I want to take them all in.
It's interesting. I mean, I am, as I think from what I know of you, I'm a deeply compassionate person.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a strong kind of current of humanism of wanting to appeal to our better angels and not wanting to just sort of be like, sucks for you. That's not who I am. You and I both.
It's kind of like what the show's about. Yeah.
Charity work.
Let's do a different approach to life. Yeah.
Helping those less fortunate.
Give back. Yeah.
Right up until the point where my children are growing up in a community. Our first day back at school for in-person learning this spring, I was taking my kids to school. We're half a mile from my house, and there's a homeless woman walking across the street wearing a leather baseball jacket, naked from the waist down. And I did that thing that only blackjack dealers do. I went, we're out of here. Like, I showed my hands to the eye in the sky, clapped, best of luck, everybody, I'm going on break. I was like, we're done. I'm out,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I guess the thing would be, if there were an apparent solution,
I always try to find the solution. Like, I think to myself, why not build, like, there's so much money out there, and they keep it for themselves, like a Bezos or whatever. He built like mansions for himself and stuff like that. Well, why not just build a community of like, just a few things that they could have, like an igloo.
I don't know if it's, I guess there's two schools of thought. I'm just freelancing here, and I don't know that this is going to be accurate. But one is you have these people who, for whatever reason, whether it's they have
drug addiction,
alcoholism,
thrown out of their homes,
mental illness, or just terrible strokes of luck, right?
Yeah.
So for some set of circumstances, nature and nurture, some combination of the both, they find themselves in this position. There's picking them up and parachuting them into a better quality of life, which is appealing because it's sort of holistic and it feels like a faster process. If you could do whatever that is.
Right.
The other thing, which it strikes me as probably the more impactful but more chronic way of addressing it is, there's got to be more emphasis on substance abuse and alcoholism, and
get to the root.
And
everything should be handled at the root.
Mental health.
I find that mental health is something that we all say, but literally no one does. No one addresses things. They're afraid to. Like, I have a situation with someone with really bad mental health, and it's affecting a lot of people. It hurts a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
People are suffering from that person's mental health.
Right.
No one will address her. No one. I mean, I can't. It's like I'm desperately trying to say, look at the damage, look at this, and no one will even say something to her.
I think a lot of that is fear-based,
yes,
right?
It is.
Because you're saying, I don't want to go walking through the minefield. I don't want to, I don't want to go step on a claymore. It's interesting when we're talking about this, another sort of side of the coin of homelessness is our very broken educational system.
Oh, yeah.
And my father and stepmother have, that's their cause, right, is education for children that are children of poverty and children that are less fortunate. And my parents have done a ton of work, sitting down with people at Harvard and very progressive.
What they're teaching, though, is important, though. We don't need to know Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. That's the kind of crap you and I grew up with. It serves no purpose.
Right. So there's that cultural sort of aspect of updating the actual information.
Mm-hmm.
But what they have found through their research is children of poverty are on average a year and a half behind their peer group by first grade. Mm-hmm. So that chasm grows with every grade, right? Because if you can't read, you can't learn.
And not to mention, they're malnourished.
Right.
You can't learn as much.
Food insecure.
Your brain is affected if you're not eating right.
So relating it to the homeless thing is, with these kids who, it sounds awful to say, but by fourth or fifth grade, they've fallen so far behind their peer group that you almost can't close the gap.
Yeah, and who's there to help them?
So the answer, in my parents' estimation, was, and this is before it came up in Biden's proposal, is like universal preschool, right? So they backed on their own a preschool program, bought all the equipment, funded the teachers, et cetera, in their community in Florida, and offered to do this with a specific school on the grounds that if they got the data points that said it was effective, the school would take it over. The school board would not only take it over and fund it themselves, they'd fund it through all Title I schools throughout the district, 11 schools. And the result was overwhelming because they're getting kids early. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're getting kids at 2.5. And the idea being, if you can, it's sort of you give a man a fish, he eats for a day.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
So if you can educate these kids.
But educate them through teaching fishing.
Yeah, that's right. And
no, literally.
it's not enough to catch you. You got to learn how to scale it.
Right.
But the idea being you have the opportunity to break a multi-generational cycle of poverty.
Exactly. And that's the issue. But people just want to ignore things and make things go away. And that's what I have a problem with. Have you ever done, I did one of the proudest moments of my life, quite frankly, was an intervention. I did an intervention on a drunk. And I was brought in by the family. I know her. And I walked in there, and everyone we went in with all backed up. They all went, whoa, I'm not doing this. And I found myself, I asked, my higher source for courage. And now I understand. You mentioned the word fear. People are afraid. Yeah. What are you afraid of? Do you think the person's going to murder you? That's what's so weird is what are they going to do to you?
They extract an emotional price.
Exactly. But is it worth it not to go through that, your own suffering of emotions or whatever it is, or your own pains of being attacked?
Well,
and you know what? I got on the bed with her, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, I'm here for you. And she was ready to attack me, and she was. She actually said, wow, you gained a lot of weight. And by the way, that's still with me. I walked away with that, too.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you're drinking. Right?
Meanwhile, she's sitting there with beer cans everywhere, cigarette, a gigantic wound that she was patting. It had so much blood on it. She's patting it with a gauze pad. And she's telling me that I look.
Let yourself go.
But I have to tell you that, again, this show is about encouraging people to kind of shift. That was a big moment for me. I really felt great being of service to someone, and she ended up in recovery. And, but it's just, there's very few people out there doing that.
But, you touched on something about, people are afraid, which really speaks to the idea that alcoholism and disease, a drug addiction, is a family disease. And when I say family, I mean your circle, right? It doesn't necessarily just mean your nuclear family. It means,
people are affected by it.
It worms its tentacles because it's part of the dynamic of how the alcoholic and the drug addict relates to everybody. And so it becomes part of the choreography of that relationship. And when that person is triggered and they start acting out and they want to punish everybody, I guess really what it comes down to, and I know you and I have experienced this in our own ways, is sometimes things need to get worse before they get better.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just got to accept the fact that instead of chronic suffering, it's better to, face the music, even if things get more compressed and more intense for a period of time, to end that endless cycle.
But then there's that point where you go, what do I let go of? What do I surrender? And what can I do? That's where the questions come in for me, is like, well, what, it's not about controlling, but what can I do about this as opposed to letting go of it? Because a lot of people have that approach of letting go because, no pain. But I always say the avoidance of pain is worse than any pain.
It's interesting because I think, I've always felt like the general misconception, to the extent that there's a broader misconception of diseases like alcoholism and addiction, it's that those people are weak, right? And I feel strongly that that is absolutely not the case. I think alcoholics and addicts are stronger and harder than a coffin nail because they keep going when any normal person would tap out and go, this is nuts. But what it is it's a misuse of that strength and that endurance for pain in a way that is self-defeating and self-destructive. And the challenge is to rebuild and repurpose that strength and tolerance for discomfort and suffering in a more healthy way, so where you can endure life on life's terms until that doesn't feel like nails on a blackboard.
And let
anymore.
people in on that story, and then they can relate to it, and then they can actually grow themselves through you. You can inspire them to go in that direction. I have a question completely off topic. What is that on your wrist?
This?
What do you mean? Look. Oh, it's on both wrists.
Yeah, it's my kids' names.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the other side. I only saw. Oh, you see you.
My kids' names.
And they won't be able to read it because it's in cursive. Kids don't even know what cursive is.
Yeah, should have got it in Helvetica.
I had my 11-year-old. We signed for a parasailing thing. He had to sign the contract. He doesn't know what a signature
Block
is.
letters, right? Like
what's their
like
signature
a death
now?
row inmate signing for his last meal just writes an X,
Yeah, it's like Manson carving carving the devil's work. I mean, I seriously, I'm going, you don't have a signature, so I actually filmed his first signature.
Oh, that's so funny.
I said, here it is. And he didn't know what to do. He was so puzzled. I said, it's called cursive.
Yeah.
They're not taught that anymore.
No, I mean, it's, handwriting is like, isn't that adorable?
When you were growing up, handwriting was.
And I got to
like
be honest with you,
thing.
My handwriting looks like a cave drawing. My handwriting is, I write in block letters. I don't write in cursive.
So you were not brought up Catholic.
No.
You always hear the stories about the Catholics.
We were raised
the best.
We were raised pagan. We did not. I mean, and I was a terrible student. So, I mean, I can sign my name, but if you asked me to write a sentence in cursive, I'd be like, I need a lot of paper and come back in an hour. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, didn't you have signature classes though? My classes were filled with them. You had to go into the lines. Which, by the way, we are people that are out of the lines.
Yeah,
that's how we creative people are.
Yeah,
we are. You don't give us lines.
Right.
That must mean all Catholic kids are not creative. The ones I grew up with had rulers. They were hit with rulers if they didn't do it right.
Yeah, it
was drilled into them. You had to be within the lines.
I mean, my kids. They also do that thing where kids you got the lined paper, and my son will write it's like microfiche. It's so small. I'm like, dude, you got that whole line, man. Rock out, man. Make it. The world's yours. Go right up to the top of the line because I look at it and I'm like, I got to get a range finder to be able to see it.
How much are your kids like you, and which ones are like you? Are they reflections of you?
In a lot of ways, yeah. I think my son certainly feels like a mini me in terms of his kind of emotional construct. My daughter, I grew up in I'm the youngest of 5 boys. So this is the first,
that's some fighting for territory, right?
Other
for
than
food.
yeah, right.
No wonder you dress like you write like a caveman. You ate like a caveman.
It was, being the youngest of 5 was it was
You're chewing on extra skin.
It was like growing up in Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was a lot of stress positions and questioning under duress, breaking of the Geneva Convention. But they, I wasn't around girls growing up, and my daughter is so fundamentally different in the way she relates. Like, my son gets what he wants through blunt force trauma. He repeats his request with more urgency and at a louder volume until he either gets in trouble or gets his way. Mm-hmm. My daughter wheedles and becomes adorable.
They're con artists.
And
they completely work you.
When my daughter was just over 2, and she was maybe 2.5. She was fussing around with the dog's water bowl, and I remember saying, I go, oh, baby, please don't do that because you'll spill all the water and then Daddy, I'll have to clean it up. And I was making dinner and I turn around, she's holding the water bowl and there's water all over the floor. And I didn't chastise her, but I go, Josie, I told you not to do that. Look, now there's water all over the floor. And she just she looked at me and shrugged and kind of twirled on one heel. And she goes, but I'm just a girl. And I literally, I put my palms up in supplication and backed away in fear. I was like, how did you know to do that?
At that age?
Yeah.
How do they get that? They get the cadence down, the voice?
If I'm really cute, he won't get angry.
Where do they get it from? Because my wife is not that way. So it's not like she's imitating. But it's like a flirtation that takes place. They know
Yes.
how to work you.
Yes.
She walked in one day. She goes, Daddy, I got you licorice. Your favorite licorice. Like that. And I'm going, thank you, Chloe. She ran ahead of Mom, who was getting the groceries. And can I have one? And my wife walks in. I told you can't have sugar. Get away from me, you harlot. I'm with my father right now who's feeding me sugar.
Yeah.
Knows how to work me because
Yeah.
I'm just about to give it to her.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. I can't believe you picked that up as well. They are completely different from go.
I asked
from
my son
out
to
of
eat
the
a
womb.
vegetable. No, it's gross. I don't want it. I'm not eating it. I'm not. You can't make me. My daughter will go, but Daddy, and my neck, I'm like forcing my son to eat his broccoli, and with my daughter, I'm like, you're all right. Go get some ice cream. You're good.
Why? Oh my God, it's amazing to me because now I think it's because we are with women. That's the way we are.
Right.
But you wouldn't think you'd do it like you'd raise the daughter like that she can work you at that age, and you don't know where they're learning it from because it doesn't really. She's in the back seat and the ball whizzes by. I'm like, hey, you can't be playing in the car. She goes, can I play with my imaginary friend? That's how she thinks. I go, yeah, sure. Ball whizzes by me. What are you doing? She goes, my imaginary friend is in your lap. How do you think my idiot sons, my 3 sons that came before her, do you think they would just go through the ball, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so
and
basic.
Some of it is because I assume there's an element of like male parent, female child, male parent, male child, like the sort of you can't bullshit a bullshitter, like the tactics of little boys,
right,
because we were little boys,
that's it.
Oh
yeah, well, I'm on to you. I always say that.
But my daughter, I honestly I could stare at my daughter for a living. Yeah. Like I just look at her like I know. Like I'm wrapped around her finger.
Yeah, it's true. And I wonder what the psychology is. There's probably books about it, but it really is a completely different relationship. Not that my 3 sons, the 3, that are older, I mean, great relationships, but some not so much anymore. But this one has got me to the point where you're right. She can get away with anything. And they know if they're starting not to, they'll throw some other move. They got all the moves. And they just got the move to stop you in your tracks from disciplining, from being hard guy. Oh, hard guy ain't going to work. I told you. No, that's done.
I wonder if it's also some of it is that she's a second child because, I've always felt like second children. This is my theory. I don't know if it's right. I don't know much. But my theory is second children are more compliant because when you have one kid, you're always asking that kid questions. You're giving them choices. Do you want a PB&J or do you want mac and cheese? Do you want to go to the park? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? With second kids, you're like, get in the fucking car. We're going to the park. And they never get a say in anything. You know what I mean? They're just like, they're a +1 in all of your plans. Like, they're like, yep, this is where we go. I'm just happy to be included, So I feel like she doesn't, maybe it would be different if she were the oldest child. I don't know, but I
don't think so. I don't think so.
She's, I feel like
there's a birth order thing. I mean, I know that's been written about, but I'm not so sure when I think gender-wise, it's just that male-female relationship, it's just extended beyond anything normal. It's who we are. It's our relationship with our mothers.
Yeah.
What kind of relationship do you have with your mom?
My mom's passed now. I mean, we had a very close relationship,
Did you?
but she was also very, my mom was a very dysfunctional person, very sick person.
How did it manifest itself?
Drug addiction and alcoholism.
But how did that manifest itself?
She was
like not showing up.
There's a chicken and the egg aspect of it. Of she did have legitimate chronic pain. She also, suffered from depression for many, many years. Did the disease cause the depression? Did the depression lead to the disease?
But what did it lead to? What was her behavior like?
Sort of afunctional. I mean, there was a period of time where I lived alone with my mom so I'm the youngest by 7 years. So by the time my parents got divorced, I was 11. All my brothers were 18, 19. They were all out of the house. So it was just me and my mom left. And my mom, who was not real functional leading up to the divorce.
Well,
Just
a mess.
cratered. So,
Right.
I mean, this is sort of heavy, but like, there was a good 5 or 6 years of at 11, I was on my own. Like
Yeah.
on my own.
Absolutely.
I was the
Almost a latchkey kid. Yeah.
I mean, no hot meals, no clean clothes, nobody getting you up for school.
And you're learning how to make your own hot meals and clean your clothes. Yeah.
And you're or just living off of PB&J and no super, like I had to raise myself.
Yeah, I got it.
And I had to parent her. Like emotionally, I was the adult.
Right, I got you.
So, emotional breakdown, a lot of tears, a lot of sorrow, a lot of, having to console an adult at 11.
You had to become grown up real fast.
Yeah.
And that affects you today.
Well, it certainly affected me then. I mean, it spun me out big time. And I became, towards the end of that, like when I hit my teenage years, 15 through 17, 18, I was, I got in trouble. I was an angry kid, I was, I got thrown out of high school.
That stuff, you store that away. That's trauma, man. That's trauma. And there's nobody there, as I said, doing an intervention with you that's coaching you along the way saying, hey, I see this in you. I see how difficult this is. Let me help you. You're on your own, finding your own help, completely unqualified. You're not an adult.
Yeah.
I had the same thing, by the way.
There's the whole sort of shame surrounding it. Like you just know. So I don't know that I would have spoken about it if I had the chance. I certainly wouldn't have known or felt comfortable articulating the depths of it. And so, so you just sort of, you end up with this, like, why is life so easy for everybody else and so hard for me? And then you get to that point where you would never, if you were, when people look at me, they would not think that I was who I was as an adolescent because, I went down a pretty dark path.
Sure. Believe me, you and I relate on this on many levels. I understand absolutely. And like I said, we had to grow fast. And then what comes with that is resilience. Never can keep me down. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep getting up. I encourage people all the time, keep getting up.
Cool Hand Luke, man. Just literally,
You might want to come up with a more modern reference than Cool Hand Luke.
Catering it to our generation.
Just catering right to me. But
no, but I mean, it really is like, as my brother said to me once, one of your greatest attributes is you can take a punch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm told this all the time. My wife even compliments me on it, on the resilience. Now, and we learn from it. What do you think was the moment in your life where you just said, wow? Do you have aha moments, as Oprah calls them? Do you have those moments like of epiphanies, life changers, transformational times in your life?
I can think of times that in retrospect it was a pivot point. I don't know that I knew of it in that moment.
Rarely do, by the way.
You know what I mean?
Rarely, yes.
I didn't have that self-awareness, but looking back, clearly there are some chapters, some moments, singular moments in my life where where the tumblers clicked in my head and everything changed, when I had dropped out of college to so I dropped out of Boston University my sophomore year to do. First of all, it took me 5 years to get through high school. I had to repeat my junior year. I left. I was encouraged to take my education elsewhere after 3 years at a public school. And if that's
code for kicked out.
You got to really shit the bed to get thrown out of a public school.
That's the truth.
So
they do anything to keep you there. Yeah.
I went to a private school.
They kick you out of there. You end up in a private school because your parents. That's where they took you.
It was a reclamation thing. It was like, a few of my brothers had went there. We had some connections there. It's a very elite private school now. Back then, it was small enough that it was for kids that had either been in private school their entire lives, or kids like me that needed more structure.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
But it wasn't like juvenile hall.
no.
That was our threat when I was growing up. They called, we're sending you to Monkey Hall.
It was.
You don't want to go to Monkey Hall.
It was the last house on the block in terms of education. Like if I was not. I don't mean that about the school. For me, it was like, you screw this up, or you're, and you're going to be one of the dudes who never leaves your hometown.
Right.
And so I excelled in that environment for 2 years, and then I got into college. And freshman year, I started doing improv. Sophomore year, I started doing stand-up, and I immediately fell in love with it.
What town is this?
This is, I dropped out of Boston University while my father, who I mentioned to you, was like his whole thrust in life is education. He was on the Board of Regents for public education in Massachusetts when I dropped out of BU to do stand-up.
I'm sure he's proud.
It was...
Did you have people saying you need something to fall back on?
It was...
Did you hear that line?
Don't
you go down that comedy road. You're a Boston guy.
Well, I grew up in Connecticut, but I started out in Boston.
But the legendary Boston comics.
Yeah. Although my time in Boston for stand-up was brief. I spent about a year there. And then
Fran Solomita directed a movie.
Yeah, Fran?
Yeah, called When Stand-Up Stood Out.
Yeah.
And it was about the Boston comedy scene.
It was like a murderer's row. Of guys. Like the guys that, I was
Lenny Clark.
Yeah, but now I was sort of just behind the Dana Gould, Janine Garofalo kind of crowd. I was, the guys that, Greg Fitzsimmons and Joe Rogan. And
I didn't know Rogan was from there. He's from the Boston comedy scene?
He was a Boston college guy.
Wow. That's the reason, because a lot of people go to those schools.
There's so many colleges. So Louis C.K., it was intense. So
Leno's from there, too.
It was dropping out of school to do stand-up. It was like telling my dad that I was joining the carnival and was going to guess weights for a living. It was just not a popular decision. And he confronted me once in front of my family at a Christmas dinner in a really, really hardcore, using another dated reference, in a Great Santini-like way.
Oh, no. I mean? Bouncing a ball off your head?
Not emotionally.
Yeah, emotionally,
It was
metaphorically bouncing that ball off your head.
Yeah.
You're in a bad basketball game. He stops.
Now, look, I want to be very clear. I am extremely close with my dad. And my dad, if I were to... I'll tell you the details of the story, and it's going to sound awful, but understand that where my dad comes from, this was not his dad was a coal miner. He grew up very poor.
Sure.
Right. So it sounds brutal now because our lives have changed for the better over generations. It's not an attractive story, but it's not reflective of who he is.
Because it was passed on to him, and it was passed on through generations.
It was fear-based. It was out of love for me and fear. But he, at Christmas dinner, in front of my girlfriend, my brothers, their wives,
the girlfriend,
and he goes, look around my house, and I go, what do you mean? And he goes, look around my house. You see my house? You see the cars in the garage? You'll never own anything like it as long as you live.
Oh, jeez.
You'll never know what it's like to own your own home. You'll never buy a brand new car. I've seen the entire fucking world. You're never going to leave this country. Your kids will grow up in an apartment. They will not go to college.
He's saying this in front of the girlfriend and the family.
They will not go to college. I just want you to know what kind of a life you're choosing for yourself.
He's knows your fucked upness.
And I go, Dad, I'm not like you. I'm not a businessman. I'm a comic. And he goes, no, you're a fucking waiter that wants to be a comic.
Oh,
and even I know there's nothing lower than that. He's like, what makes you think you're so special? Because you got the lead in your high school plays. There's a kid like you in every single high school in this country, and they all want to be stars. What makes you think you're so special? And he was trying to break me. You know, he was trying to break me. He was trying to shake the dream out of me. And
this was his motivational speech. This was Tony Robbins meets the Marquis de Sade.
It was. I don't think I don't even know if he would remember this, but it's like it was fear. Like he genuinely, as a kid that grew up, I didn't grow up poor. My dad grew up poor. So what I'm sure, not to make excuses for him,
he's
but
afraid,
he's like, I know what it's like to be poor.
Yes.
You have no idea. And I, just as an outsider, can see how independable this industry is. And I know that the odds are it's going to be a very hard road for you, and I'm frightened for you. But he didn't have the tools to be able to express it like that. So he tried to, it was like a scared straight moment for him, you know?
Sure.
The effect that it had in that moment was just sitting there. I just had this like...
Paralyzed?
It was like a hardening inside me. Like I just went, now it's a fucking steel cage death match.
And now, so it did in a negative way. It motivated you in a positive way.
Absolutely. Like I was like,
I'll show him.
Now I will fucking die before I let you be right.
Right. So when you're on Talk Soup, is that your first big break, right? Talk Soup, of which I'm sitting there going, why don't I have that fucking job? Anyway.
Why don't I still have that job? But I, honestly,
so
like
when you're
when
you get the contract, your first day on Talk Soup.
That was years later. I went home from that dinner, and I went to the clubs every single night for months on it. I rededicated myself at a level beyond anything I had ever even scratched before. Right. I became so much more
possessed,
tenacious, and driven, and that led to Talk Soup.
Interesting. Okay, but you're on Talk Soup. You get it first day, ready, you're on, right? Are you watching me, Dad?
I don't think my dad's ever watched anything I've done. I mean, I know he's seen moments of it, but
you're not calling him and going, hey, I'm on TV, you got to watch my new show.
He might have tuned in for an episode or a part of an episode of something of some of the stuff that I've done. I don't think it's not his thing, you know?
Yeah, but I don't mean that. I'm talking about you and your feelings. Like, you better be watching me. And like it sounds like you were motivated to get to that position
but
by that speech.
It's with my dad, it is, and again, this is born out of growing up, son of a coal miner,
right.
You know, it's not about the prestige of being on a cult classic, poorly paying cable TV show. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about, recognition from your peer group at the fucking Comedy Store. It's about dollars and cents. It is a math equation.
Right.
And it is a math equation that is netted out with surgical precision. Mm-hmm. Like he's, so for him.
But you don't want that, do you?
No, but I mean, I'm just saying that's his metric.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because
he's a guy who's probably been largely motivated by financial fear his whole life. So
and you're motivated by the fear of him.
Fear of letting him down, fear of being proven wrong, fear of being a failure. Yeah. But so it really wasn't until I had moments of making a lick of good dough here and there, but it wasn't until like I had the run on Wipeout where I had a 7-year run on a network show, and
another one I was up for,
and so
I still remember the audition.
And so I, it wasn't until then that I feel like but it's so ingrained in him the same way, he carries the trauma of his childhood, and I use trauma as an expression for the effects of the way he grew up. The same way we were talking about the way we grew up, or my period of time with my mom is part of me. He just said to me not a year ago, maybe it's time to move to Florida and like get a real estate license.
Did not.
Swear to God.
He did.
Yeah. When I came home
it's time.
When I came home after my honeymoon, second season of Wipeout, my wife and I came back. I had
really
done,
good bank on a network show.
I had just done like 2 late night shows in like a month. And I came home. Wipeout was blowing up at the time. And I came home, and my dad at a barbecue, I'm not making this up, said, you ought to take advantage of this opportunity and do something smart, like get out of this business and open up a Dunkin' Donuts. And
specifically Dunkin' Donuts.
And that week,
he had done the research.
That week, Wipeout was the #1 rated show on television.
Jeez.
Of all broadcast and cable television. And I literally, like, I looked at him, you know, like the RCA Vicar dog, like I was, like, my head cocked at a 45-degree angle, and I was like, Dad, I have the #1 show on TV right now. Like, I cannot, there's nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm right now, at least in this week, I'm sitting on the mountaintop. Why would I leave that to go do something that I have no... And he's like, yeah, but how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
and the answer was 5 more seasons.
You know, I understand it, and it's their fears as well, and they mean well. But we have to mean well now and pass on better memes into our children.
You know what? Permit me this. I was one of the proudest moments of my life, one of the most meaningful, positive pivot moments of my life. And in defense of my father, to show the full 360-degree radius of who he is, because I just told some very tough stories about him, because he's an incredibly loving, supportive, generous man. And those stories are not fair to him in terms of only exposing
They're not
him.
that bad, by the way.
But every year, for at least, you know, until recently with COVID and stuff, the 5 boys, my brothers and I, would take my dad away for a 3-day weekend, stag weekend. Called ourselves a stag 6 because there's 6 of us. And our motto was no women, no kids, no excuses. Mm-hmm. My brother would come from Australia. And every year we'd go to a different city. And there was one year where we did Los Angeles. And I took my brothers and my father to see me do stand-up at the Laugh Factory. My dad had not seen me do stand-up in 27 years.
That's a lot of nerves. You had to have nerves that night.
We went out to dinner beforehand. We drove over to Laugh Factory, and God bless Jamie for taking care of me. He had the owner's booth, a little curved booth by the bathrooms that put aside for my family. And it was fucking packed, standing room only. And I had one of those sets.
Really?
I had one of the sets of my life. And
you're extra juiced.
Dude, I was on fire.
Steroids.
It was like it was like one of those things where you're like pitching a perfect game.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
it's like Costner, Clear the Mechanism.
I was
you and the
doing
catcher.
a whole bit about my dad, about turning into my dad.
Oh, wow.
You know? And I was able to, like, I was playing to 2 audiences. So I'm playing to the house, and then I'm looking over and making eye contact with my dad, you know, and smiling, and then going back to the crowd.
Did the crowd know he was in the audience?
No.
Oh, you never said
No.
Over here?
No. Magical moment.
You didn't do that Cotton Club moment?
Yeah,
Over
right.
here, ladies and gentlemen, W.C. Fields. No?
No.
You're just glancing at him, catching the eye, moving on.
Yeah, just like.
Right.
Almost like a watch this. Watch what I'm about to do, you know? And I mean, I'm not one of these guys that just throws these phrases around, but like I ragdolled this audience. And I get off. And we leave, and we're all standing out front, and I get choked up thinking about it. My dad goes, he was sort of laughing about something, you know, some part of the bit that my brothers and we were talking about, and he goes, you are really funny, Johnny. You got a gift, and in that moment, I got everything I wanted at that Christmas dinner. You know what I mean? And it was worth it. Like, it filled whatever part of me had a hole in it from that. That was pretty amazing.
Well, we talked earlier about an epiphany. There's one.
Yeah.
That's the moment. I mean, that's a very big key moment. That's a shapeshifter. You just went to a whole other stratosphere. There's a letting go, a surrender.
And it changed the dynamics of my relationship with him, because a couple of years later when Wipeout ended, I remember talking to him on the phone, and I was like, I don't feel like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Maybe I should sell my house. Maybe, just, shed some inventory, and he goes, I think you're being too hard on yourself. You've been doing this for 25 years now. You always land on your feet. You're going to be fine. Just have a little confidence in yourself. Everything's going to work out. You'll be great. You're very talented. And I was quiet for a second, and I go, who are you and what have you done with my father? And he laughed his ass off, because I had to call him out on the fact that it's like,
this is not that dinner.
No.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's great, though, that you got to experience that. He used the word gift.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a strong word. When people say that, that means you are a cut above. You're not some hacky comic telling jokes, and you have a gift that you're sharing, and that is a very big deal. My dad, literally, the best thing he ever said to me was, "You're useless as tits on a bull. I need you like Custer needed more Indians," and he would repeat it, where it became a mantra, like a TM mantra. Useless as tits on a bull.
Right. Right.
Need you like Custer needed more Indians. But just like you, it motivated me. And now I visit him. I visited him a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, and this strong man that had so much impact in my life, John, it turns into, like, I feel for him. Because what did it all do? He had a harem, his own cult and a harem of women, and in the mountains, he's Mr. King of the Poconos, he called himself, and all that. And now he's just like whittled away with no power, and literally no power, feeble. And this is a guy that ran my life.
Yeah.
But
they're just people, man.
Exactly. He had no idea how to be a dad, and I forgive him completely.
Yeah.
Now I can just be with him. But there's no more of that feeling, oh my God, he said I didn't have man hands. He told my mom I was like 7 years old. So then before he would come over, because, he left when I was born, he would visit. I would sand my hands with an emery board till they were bloody, so that he would have rough hands to shake. Jesus. And it's the same guy that I'm sitting there a few weeks ago just going, oh, wow, this is what life has come down to.
Yeah.
So all that power, all that control, all that dominance that they're about, it's their own fears and all that stuff, it got simplified to the point where it got into just a complete state of forgiveness, a complete state of acceptance of this is just all he had.
Well,
it's okay that that's all he has.
That relates
Take the expectations out.
One of the most profound things I ever heard was somebody said, a guy said, I have to remember that anyone that ever hurt me, a parent, a lover, a friend, they were doing the best they could with the tools at their disposal. Yeah. It wasn't personal. They didn't do it to me. Yeah. They just did it because they didn't know any better.
If anyone gets anything out of this podcast, it's that.
That's freed me.
It's a big. You're exactly right. And that way, we don't live in a victim mentality.
Yeah.
By the way, I have so many times where I'm judgmental. I actually judge people for judging people. Like that's up. Yeah. But we're all guilty of the judgment. But I mean, it's so important that people understand that. And it's at that level of acceptance and keeping out of expectations. It's very important. But do you have this that goes on? This is one of my judgy things. I'm just admitting it. I hate victims. I go out, I have something inside of me.
Like the self-pity kind of victims?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people's health is victim-y, when they, sorry, folks. I won't even be specific. I had it happen yesterday. I made my son laugh. Somebody came along in one of those scooters, and they're like entitled. On one of those in Costco, we're shopping, and they come, like, get out of my way. Like they own the road, and I started going off on, this... It's like, how they got there, because it wasn't from like, It wasn't like they were, cliff diving and they're paralyzed. They got there from eating too much,
Right.
from being at Costco too much.
Right. It was a nutritional cliff.
Exactly. And I have to tell you, I get judgy. When they're I was like, what kind of a life are these people living? And so I do get that way, and I do laugh at myself though. And my son ended up laughing at me. He knows how bad it is that I'm saying these things.
I think I feel like, for me, people who work hard to point out why they're not to blame for their own circumstances. That's really what it comes down to for me. Yeah. And it happens in ways that are big and small, material and metaphysical. And but it's maddening because part of that defense of putting up a wall to protect yourself from criticism, it's not my fault, is you're putting up a wall that keeps you from getting out of those circumstances.
Keeps you from evolving. You're done. You're devolving now. As long as you're staying in a state of blame, finger pointing, anything else besides self-responsible accountability, doing your own personal inventory.
Right.
This is what these are the keys to life. That's the irony, is it's the key. Not being right, not defending yourself. I do that a lot. Stopping it. Yeah. Working on stopping it. I don't need to defend myself to you. I know what my intentions are. I know I'm a good person.
Right. But it's lack of acceptance, right? I mean, it's like eventually you just you accept it, whether it's somebody did something to you or you failed to do something and you're blaming somebody. You just got to accept that and then work from that baseline of, okay, now I'm here, where do I go from here, as opposed to justifying based on the past. But it saddens me because it's a self-imposed prison, and it's frustrating because sometimes those people, it's like when, the sort of cliche of you try to save a drowning person and then they start dunking you underwater, like they will violently defend themselves, kicking and scratching to stay in that place.
They'll claw your neck. And they're taking they take you down with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to swim away. You can throw them a life preserver. That's fine. It's up to them if they want to get the life preserver. But I'm not going to get in it with them. Let me ask you a question. So you've had these phases of your career. Obviously, you did Talk Soup, which is a wonderful launching pad, and then the Wipeout. Mm-hmm. Now you're on a cooking show.
Yeah,
right.
Baking show. Yeah.
Now this is what I want to know: the you are today. How is that different than the you were when you were doing those other shows? You're a different person when you're showing up at the set now. And how are you a different person?
I think, first of all, I'm at a point, and I know you will understand this, where at the beginning of my career, it was all about what I wanted to do creatively, right? What I felt was funny or what I was trying to accomplish, my own kind of carving out my own brand.
Right.
The difference now is when I go, I'm like going, all right, how can I be of service to this production and these people? How can I give them what they need for this show to be successful? And how can I do it in a way that is a positive influence on everybody around me?
And organic to you.
Yeah, exactly. How can I find something that works for me, that services them, and where everybody's going to be pleased to be around you, where you're not going to be a big brooding negative dark cloud.
Wondering where your Oscar is. That's the thing in show business, is the intentions change. They have for me over the years. I mean,
dude, I feel like at this point, I'm like the Crash Davis of the entertainment industry from Bull Durham. Like,
another reference. At least that's pretty. That's like late 80s.
I'm shooting for like the basic cable Hall of Fame at this point. You know what I mean? I just want another season in the sun, man. It's my only hustle. Any day that somebody hires me to do something is a good day. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. And have fun doing it, no matter what it is. I mean, if they told me I had the coal mine, for the right money, I do. But I mean, I'd have to find a way to enjoy it, have to find a way to have passion, have to have a way to have connection with people.
Right.
That is the big key. That's the thing that was missing for me in stand-up, It's such a solo career. And it really is about...
It's a weird lifestyle.
It really is about self, and it is about, working out stuff from the dinner, from the great Santini. It's
being
about
on your own for 19 hours a day and then being bathed in the attention of strangers for 4 hours, then back in the isolation tank. It's jarring.
That sounds like a torture.
It's weird. It's like I tried to go out on the road a few years ago. I'm like, I'm in a fucking Ramada Inn in Timonium, Maryland, playing McGooby's Joke
Oh my
House,
God, I've been there.
away from my wife and kids. Like, what am I doing?
That's rough.
Yeah. How much porn can you watch? Like, at a certain point, you're like, I got to go home, man.
I'm even off of that now.
Yeah,
so now there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's not even a USA Today outside my door.
Yeah.
Remember those days?
Yeah.
I said, this is a good hotel. They got my USA Today. I start my day with my sports page on the toilet. Yeah, we're good. So I kind of got acclimated. I did like that system. But now it's just like, just want to be just connected with people in a very profound way, energetically matching. Not defending, not running, not needing. Right. That's another one. Victims and needy people. I don't need, the adulation. You get it from the connection now. It doesn't matter. I get standing ovations all the time. People say, I never even see standing ovations. I don't want to say it's meaningless to me, but there's this energetic flow that just happened, and they're appreciating that. That I appreciate is in the moment with that flow, with people saying, I get you. Right. That's where, when you really break it down from an aerial view, that's really what it is we get one another.
Yeah. And you alleviate the isolation of the human experience.
Exactly.
For people for an hour or two,
and you're helping them.
Yeah. And they're aware, like if everybody's laughing, they're part of something. If you're watching stand-up alone in your room, you can be, you're watching a Netflix special, you can be laughing, but the energy of being in a room with 350 people laughing, now you're part of, it's like a super organism. Like you're part of an experience of something, a chemical reaction that's happening on a bigger level. And that feels energized.
It's literally contagious. I mean, absolutely. And it's an amazing experience that I wish other people could have. We're very unique in the experience. Yeah. When you think about it, you are alone. You're the choreographer. You're the director. You're the makeup artist. You're everything in this movie. Every single element is handled. The only thing we're not doing is turning on the mic.
And it's a weird type of hypnosis. Like it's almost like a social hypnosis where you're taking people, you're lulling them into that journey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because some people come in, they're not willing to go. And they can get carried along and realize, holy shit, that was...
I love when they come up afterwards. I normally don't like comedy. Right. You ever have that one? I normally like comedy. I liked.
Right. And I just thought I'd dump $135 tonight and going to see something that I hate.
Well, the other thing is like, really? What's the rest of your life like? You just, what I mean? Like, that's what you're going to lead with that? I normally don't laugh.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you? We need to laugh more.
Yeah. I tend to be a joyless person and a total energy suck of everyone.
This hour and a half I spent with you, Craig.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, go on your life. But that's a perfect way to wrap up. We have to wrap up. But it's such a pleasure hanging with you. It was kind of fun. It's, this show, it goes everywhere. I mean, it could go from the silliness of talking about a rub and tug, with Eddie Ift, to going deep with you is really kind of...
Wait, a rub and tug from
No, I'm sorry, Eddie Ift.
Or with Eddie Ift, because that's a very different...
Folks, I'm glad he clarified that. Because Eddie Ift talked about...
I've had a very similar experience to one of those. I'll let you guys figure out which one. I know Eddie well.
He played a joke on someone about it was a rub and tug joke, but anyway, it got real silly. But you and I, got to go. I really experienced you in a different way today because I grew up watching you, on TV hosting this Talk Soup thing. Going, what the fuck's with that little white patch in his head?
It's spread now.
Now there's no patch. It's just a whole field. Yeah. But I mean, so from that to now I have a better understanding of you. We lived a lot of the similar ways that led to us being gifted. We are gifted. Anyway, I see a dog out there. I think it's our next guest. Okay. All right. So John, real pleasure.
Thank you very
much.
John,
how do we find you on social media?
You can find me at John_Henson at Twitter.com. And that's really all that matters.
Oh, you don't do Instagram?
I do. I think I'm ye old skunk boy at Instagram, but I'm never on Instagram.
I think you are, actually. I've been there.
You
need to post some stuff. All right. Hey, I hope you all had a wonderful time with this intimate talk with John Henson. This is how we go with this. It's a go with genuine flow. And I think that I hope and encourage everyone to go with that. Have some courage to change and shift and transform. I mean, really, it's a remarkable way to live. He and I have both been there. We've been in those times where you feel so hopeless. And we hopefully brought you a little hope today, connected with you. Make sure you follow this podcast. It's Enlightened Up. Like us, spread the word, tell other people, follow John Henson. And just remember, everybody, enlighten the fuck up, will you? See you next time.